everyone, and welcome to the ESL Grand Final of Australs 23. So I think we're just about ready to get started. Firstly, I want to congratulate MAR WHS and IGNOU ARR for reaching this final. Congratulations. The motion that we'll be debating today is that we prefer religious teachings that emphasize the belief that human beings are born good instead of born evil. And on the panel with me are Anum, Brendon, Joel, Michael, Rob, and Ruth. Speaking times, as we know, are 8 minutes. I encourage speakers to time themselves. And please, as the audience, encourage everyone to turn their phones off and listen carefully. I think we can get started. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome the first speaker of the affirmative team to begin the debate.
Okay, well, I hope I'm audible. I'm Sarah, she, her. Before I get started, I just really want to make a very short little speech, I guess. I'm very grateful. This is my first majors finals, and I'd like to thank everyone here for being with us. Oh, testing. This is awkward. Testing. Hello. This one's working. Yeah, thank you. So I want to thank my Mara contingent and also the Malaysian contingent. We hope that we're making you proud. I'd like to thank my family, and Adam, and everyone here. Thank you for being here. The goodness is in everyone. That if you are evil, it is because you were incapable to feel empowered. That if you were evil, it is because of your indoctrination that were put on you. Truth is, everyone has an innate good, and we act upon the goodness that is already there within everyone. Few things I think important within setup, right? We think that the religious teachings could probably look like scriptures, sermons, probably something that has to do with Catholicism, which means that there's an emphasis on the fact that probably children or the next generation are very much innocent and are essentially good. We think that the teachings then mean that religion then becomes a point of trying to unite the fact that humans should collectivize because there is a good in everyone. We think then, at the point in which this is there, this means that human is a clean slate, which looks like that the fact that you are inherently good, you are born to do good in this world, that there is a purpose, you have the free will, and that all humans are equal because that is the metric that we are born with. We think that if you do any sort of bad or commit anything bad, then it's not because you are evil, but rather because of number one, society, number two, the upbringing that you were put into, but number three, the environment, the surrounding that necessarily puts you in that position. What negative defense then is the perception of evil within the nature of humans, that religion is only used as a corrective measure. This is the reason to the many atrocities that we have because of religion, because you think that you are born evil. 2 points of framing then. The first is that people are limited in their ability to do good in all instances. This debate needs to be a mixture of both the good and the bad. The question then becomes, what are the instances if they do good or bad? What is the reason behind that action necessarily? But the second point of framing here then is to understand that religious teachings are there on both sides is actually how it is perceived, or how it is essentially like believed by many people, the extent of that. Two arguments I'll bring in for today. The first is the preconception of evil demonizes human beings and their valid choices, and I'll give you a second on how, at the point in which you believe that there's on their side, this is the justification for the discrimination towards minorities. On to the first argument, the preconception of evil demonizes human beings and their valid choices. The first level is just to understand, why are human beings actually very limited to access these things? Number one, we think it's because of the structural barriers that you are in. I.e., if you are a minority, the struggles that you necessarily have is very much different than possibly a person who is within the majority. Or number two, it also looks like, for example, the gender that you are in. If you are a woman necessarily, we think the barrier for you to actually do good is far more harder at the point in which the majority will always be men. But number three, it also looks at the identity that you have. So for example, any sexual relationship or the feelings that you have as a human being are always questioned at the point in which you don't have these particular accesses. But number two, we think it's also important to note why people actually do bad anyway. We think it's because of the positions that you are in, for example. It looks like how the families have how your families or your households have necessarily, uphold you or essentially brought you up. But it also looks, number two, possibly the struggles in the work life or in the corporate where you always have to question things necessarily. But we think even if you don't buy that, we think human beings always have a gray area where you are morally dubious, like doing things. Because at the point in which we understand that humans are very different and subjective, we think that's the point in which you do things not necessarily because you want to, but because there are many, many reasons that necessarily is that. The problem here then is that if there is an innate evil in all humans, you demonize every action that you do and you invalidate it at a point in which you are unable to self-actualize yourself. We think it brings up to a few problems. The first is blaming, right? At the point in which you feel this, you feel more distance towards what religion has. Or number two, the feeling that you are always inadequate, that whatever I do is never enough to the perception that I am born with. But number three, you feel that you're constantly running on a treadmill that you don't know when it would end. So this looks like, for example, you are in a tunnel, you don't know necessarily when the light is going to be there. So for example, if you do bad, it's because you're evil, but if you're good, you're just trying to make up for your inherent evil nature that is there. That is the thing panel that the negative needs to defend. The second thing then is the coercion to do perceived good things. We think religion is already in this nature that we most often than not feel a lot of the atrocities that religion has put on you and the coercion that is there. That's why we see things like, giving in charity because that's the good thing to do. This could possibly be the small things, right? But it could also look like justifying you hitting your children simply because they are innately bad as soon as they're born. These are things in the mechanism of the structures necessarily why religion is always so coercive against you. So even if you don't buy that, understand that even if you love your child, you need to necessarily treat them differently or harshly because they were born evil. Number three, it also looks at the justification for the immoral actions that is necessarily there. People want you to do a lot of good things in order to cleanse yourself, right? This looks like parents using this always against you because they know that you were born bad, but necessarily that the only good things that you are trying to do is only to make up the fact that you are just evil or that you are just super duper not cleansed. Strategic conclusion here is that number one, it's hard to access religious teachings at the point in which you do believe that you are inherently evil. So A, people feel locked out of religion, so they simply opt out. So you don't have access to the support structures or to the solace that religion actually gives you. But B, people who need religion as minorities cannot access this at a point in which religion only forces them to do things. So even if they do actually do the good things, they never feel the fact or why necessarily they're doing these things. I'll give you a second argument on why this is a justification for the discrimination on minorities. We think religion is dogmatic on both sides. The difference is the extent of the severity or the extreme points within the premises of religion. So the first thing to understand here is that people who are perceived as evil in status quo possibly looks like, for example, the LGBTQ community, where the religious teaching says that you need to be cleansed, that this is not the way that God has made you, but necessarily that this is the point in which have to fight back. That women are supposed to be submissive because men will always be the savior, and that women are the ones who are always tempting men at the end of the day because you are evil inherently. We think the mechanism for this argument is not necessarily understanding when does it start. Because it also looks like as a child, when you are indoctrinated and you are unable to self-actualize. But number two, it also looks like every point of your life against the indoctrination, where you have to invalidate the actions that you have made within the period of time. We think it looks like three particular very powerful impacts. Number one, possibly looks like gay conversion therapy. Because you need to be validated, you need to be cleansed, you need to go to therapy because your this choice of like, you know, what you want as an identity or as a sex is necessarily not there anymore at the point in which you are evil. But number two, it also looks like gender roles. The men are the breadwinner, women are supposed to be submissive because we are always saved by them because we need to be saved necessarily. But number three, we think there's no accountability at that point because to get necessarily any of the good things that you want, you need to do good. You need to do necessarily the most things in order for it to be good. So for you to actually challenge someone, you need to at least be a priest or necessarily someone that is strong enough within religion that they acknowledge you. For all those reasons, it's proven that at the point in which every human beings are good and that we do good things because we are good. Thank you.
I thank the first affirmative speaker for that speech, and now I'd like to welcome the first negative speaker to begin the negative team's case.
Oh yeah, hello everyone, this is Robin. I'm the leader of opposition. So before I start my speech, a couple of shout outs. I'm really happy to be debating at the ESL final at Krabi Australs. So firstly, I'd like to thank my family for making me go here because they're like, what reason do you have not to go? Because they always support me. I love them so much. Second shout out to Lavanya, who has been my constant teammate and we have worked really hard to be better at debating. And lastly to my teammates and the entire Indian debating circuit. Thanks for the support. I will be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. If I'm the best debater of the world, I have no incentive to actually work hard. I have no incentive to change my current level. I have no incentive to go for case prep, to mocks, to actually watch videos. But if I'm not the best debater of the world, I have all those incentives, I have a driving force. Similarly, once you are evil, you have an incentive to be good. But once you're already good, we think it only creates complacency and there's no reason for people to actually do good in the world to begin with that. I think the biggest reason we said God loses is because their case is based on an assumption is because others are evil, I can literally do anything and inflict any form of harm. But this debate starts at a point in time where you yourself are also evil. Meaning there has to be a self-correcting mechanism for me myself to be good, because it comes with the recognition is that because even I was born evil, meaning I need to do something to move away from this evil to begin with that. But secondly, they say is that every minority's ability to do good is limited in terms of women and people from gender minorities. I have two responses. The first is to suggest that good is on a spectrum, meaning every person on their own individualistic level can say that this is to the extent I can do good. And intuition pump can be that a lot of religious people also in terms of their religious practices also operate on a spectrum. Some people are very religious, some people just go church once a week to begin with that. But secondly, religion is an incentive to be palatable for people to join religious groups. This explains that religion is incentive to not to tell you the worst kind of actions that you actually have to like give $1 million to charity and then only you can get to good because the palatability incentives to begin with that. Quickly moving on to the framing. In what way do we imagine that religions preach that humans are born evil, right? So this is what religion tells you. Humans are born inherently evil. They have selfish tendencies. They have things like anger, jealousy, greed, and things which exist naturally within them. All of this is biologically and mentally inherent. But further, religions also tell them that life is a journey from evil to good. It tells humans that you have to fight this evil. You have to overcome this evil. You have to have your actions which actually overcome these natural tendencies of greed and selfishness. It gives everyone a purpose to do something, to take these actions. Therefore, you ask people to form communities because evil is a such greater force and you actually have to be very strong to actually fight this to begin with, right? Argument 1. Why this pushes people to do good in life? This is true because of 4 structural reasons. A. Redemption and salvation. Humans feel an inherent need to redeem themselves of this evil. Religion have incentive to villainize the aspect of evil, which means people move towards salvation, which means people move towards doing good acts to begin with. The second reason is self-preservation incentives. Within religion, they're likely going to frame things like how you will get the rewards in life. These rewards can look like wealth. These rewards can look like peace once you do something good to begin with, once you move away from evil, because religion will tell you won't get anything once you're evil to begin with. This means because of self-preservation incentives, you have incentive to do good. But thirdly, fear. Within religion also use the mechanism of fear, in which religion tells you that if you do not move towards the path to be good, and if you just stay towards the evil like the way you are, which means if you do not take the effort, you can be reborn as a cockroach and you can literally go to hell. Then this fear acts as a driving force for people to actually do good actions like charity, like treating other people with respect, like actually not discriminating people, because they want to get that benefits in life. They want to get the benefits of the afterlife and also the materialistic life to begin with. But fourthly, human beings value goodness and is seen as aspirational in nature, because they know that society generally respects goodness and you will be treated well. Therefore, we think that human beings have this aspirational value to actually get to that pathway and to do good actions to begin with. The second thing I'm going to prove is that by the comparative, this drive towards change does not exist, which will prove that our mechanisms are completely exclusive to begin with. This is true because of 4 structural reasons. A. There's a sense of complacency, because I'm already good, right? Like my first example about me being the world's best debater. This means is that you don't feel the need to do something. People actually set goals when you're already born with that goal, so your ability to actually form a goal is actually very limited. But 2. Good actions require tons of effort. This is true because often to do good, you have to deprioritize yourself. You have to think about others. Maybe you have to move away from a comfortable life and maybe do charity. This means oftentimes doing good requires efforts, requires energy, requires time, when the opportunity cost can literally be you actually doing all of these things to make yourself get a lavish lifestyle. This means the drive to actually deprioritize yourself ceases to exist when you're already good to begin with. The third structural reason is that your image of yourself is already very high. Because I'm already very good, we think there's no next step that I want to achieve. We think on our side, human beings actually plan their life and I'm at this stage and I want to get to that stage. Because oftentimes life is a journey from point A to point B. That this is how I'm going to get a bonus in the next year. I'm going to get a better job. I think this is how human beings actually set goals for themselves, which ceases to exist on their side to begin with, right? But lastly, there's no need metric on their side. There's no need metric because there's no need for you to actually create some actions which actually lead you to a better standing because you're already at a better standing to begin with. The conclusion of this argument is that on our side, we have much more charities. Therefore, on scale, we think more number of people are actually benefited because religion is the biggest, in terms of organization which actually gives money out to people, which actually help people in different countries in the most vulnerable areas to begin with. But 2, we think people's ability to treat other people is also actually better because oftentimes it's a self-correcting mechanism that I need to be do good because of my self-preservation incentives. I will treat other people well because that will make my karma thing actually better. Argument 2: why do you critically analyze a lot of religious teachings and a lot of things in life? So this argument will also deal with their argument about how it acts as a reason for oppression, right? So I think the first thing to say here is that you operate with a sense of skepticism, that because other humans can have evil intentions, which means you have incentive to question things, which means you have incentives to think things with rationality, to actually question things with reason, to actually think if there is any credence to what this individual is telling or even what my religious leader is telling. This is important because your ability to be brainwashed is decreased on our side, because this means you have much more individuality and self-awareness on our side, primarily because you also have the recognition about other people's intentions can be evil. This means your ability to be manipulated, your ability to easily give in regards to whatever the other person is saying decreases on our side to begin with. This means for minorities you literally give in to the oppression by majorities and to literally succeed to the demands of whatever the majorities tell them is decreased on our side, because their ability to fight is much more, because even they operate with a skepticism is because their intentions may not be the best for me and I need to literally look out for myself to begin with it. But secondly, this is important because there's more agency to an individual on our side, and having more agency is generally a good thing to begin with. But 2, people's subjective intentions can be good, but not the end outcome can be good. Intuition pumping, Thanos and Avengers had very noble intentions, guys. Thanos literally wanted the world population to be half so that like the sharing of resources can actually be better, except like the outcome was not good. This means you're likely going to critically analyze your own questions. This means you're going to go for the thinking stage, like will this thing actually be good for people? Am I actually doing something good? This means your ability to actually not be so much self-consumed is decreased. Because what is the comparative? The comparative is me as an individual think that I am a good person. This means every action that I will take will also be good. This means there is no self-analysis, there is no self-critical thinking of whether this action is actually good for the other people, because people on their side are much more self-consumed, and we think that is generally a bad thing or net to begin with. Right? What does this prove at the end of the debate? And this proves is that there's much more questioning, there's much more feedback mechanisms, there's actually much more critical thinking. This is important because once you don't do these things, often people's actions can literally be very detrimental to the other person insofar as you're not putting in a lot of thinking on that to begin with. But number two, you think oftentimes your ability to care for other person is actually based on what you think is best for them and not what can actually be best for them. This means like there's no reason for you to actually think on that regards. But thirdly, we think people's ability to be actually gaslighted and manipulated is much more on their side because there's a recognition of the other person being more good. If a man tells something to a woman is likely going to think this particular individual must have good intentions for me because this person is good. Therefore, you're much more likely to forgive people than you should not forgive people. You're much more likely to give in to whatever other people are saying because you literally listen to everything because there's no sense of skepticism. Therefore, all the mechanisms about the use as an oppression against minorities. Now, minorities have a much more credence that they give to their religious leaders. Minorities think that religious leaders God should be gospel on their side. On our side, you have some degree of skepticism, and we think skepticism is good. Because for all these reasons, we think that that religion gets better on our side because there's more questionability, but two, human beings generally do better good acts if the society is good and right. Because of all these reasons, very proud to negate this motion. Thank you.
I thank the first Negative speaker for that speech, and now I'd like to welcome the second affirmative speaker to continue the affirmative team's case.
Everyone can hear me, right? Okay. So I'm also going to give thanks. So before I start my speech, I would just like to shout out a couple of very important people in my life. And it's been a while since Mara has gotten to a majors finals, so hopefully you forgive me. First and foremost, I want to thank my girlfriend, Aisha, for being with me since day one. We have known each other for 7 years, and I hope to know you for the rest of my life. I want to thank my teammates, Hegel and Sarah, who had put up with me throughout UABC and Australs. Thank you so much. I want to thank the entire Mara contingent for being a space of comfort, safety, and improvement. Coaches Mike, Fred, Azim, you guys have been incredible for Mara and life-changing for me. I want to thank all Malaysian institutions, Malaya, IIU, UKM, UPM, Sunway. We are all in this fight together. And lastly, I want to thank Asia and all Asian debaters who have paved the way for us. We are all really standing on the shoulders of giants. Thank you so much. Start my speech. The most privileged people in religion are the cis men who are rich and capable. It is never really the women on the front lines who have to go through to be indoctrinated by the subservient nature of religion. The gay boy who feels displaced even at home. These privileged people are not running on the treadmill and they are perceived to already achieve redemption. So perhaps the negative team is correct. Redemption might exist, but it only exists for the rich and capable who are already in the forefronts of the world and are currently stagnating. We think that's a wrong stakeholder. The most important are the people who are gender minorities, religious minorities, who look to religion as a place of comfort and not for progress. For all those reasons, I think negative is already out of the debate. A couple of things I'll do. Firstly, I'll just disprove their inherent stakeholder, which is just the people who feel as if they are stagnating in life. I don't necessarily think that's a part of the debate. Secondly, on demonization. Thirdly, on gender minorities. And lastly, I'll give you an argument on how political polarization is worse on that side of the house. Firstly, their second argument argues that people are inherently going to feel as if they are at the precipice of the world and will never really want to progress anymore. The question here is, will people just stagnate? We don't think so, for two reasons. The first is that social pressures already exist. Lavish lifestyles will probably exist. And listen to the language that their side of the house wants to uphold. They're saying that people have to progress and acquire more. Those things are not what religion propagates anyway. But secondly, if that is really what they want, do things like charity and stuff like that, people who are capable have already been doing that. That's literally people who are already in the upper echelons of society. But thirdly, humans inherently always want improvement, even in their worst points in life and even in the best points in life. So it's really absurd for them to think that they need religion in order for people to be pushed ahead. But the second more important question is, are these the stakeholders? Because if you're already at the highest point of your life and you feel as if you are complacent, we don't necessarily think you need to access religion to anyway. Perhaps you're already the privileged people within these religions to begin with. We think the more important stakeholder are people who have no agency as a result of religion. Now, let's look at demonization, because we argued three very important claims on how people feel as if they are running on a treadmill in the hopes of acquiring redemption. Their best response here is, that's actually a good thing, because redemption pushes you to do well. But what we argued is really just analytically prior, because we just said that that's precisely the harm, is that you feel as if you have to consistently run on this treadmill. We think the harm here is people are coerced into making decisions that they otherwise would not have made. Society indoctrinates you to always be subservient to your husband, and therefore even in circumstances where you feel as if your husband is wrong, you still want to believe that because you feel as if you are redeeming yourself by being subservient to your husband. That is inherently immoral, because you condemn people in life with shackles on their feet because you don't tell them that they can be good, and you make the barrier of entry to religion much, much higher. The second and third harms that we argued were left unresponded to. The people who are forced to do things because society tells them to, these are the people that are more susceptible to failure. The comparative is on our side house far better, because the barrier of entry is much lower. You don't have to be a prophet and you don't have to run to achieve success. We think this is inherently good for your self-worth. Religion is inherently a personal thing. We think that perhaps they can give all these tangible benefits, but religion really is just you conversing with God and going into that church and feeling as if you are safe. We think that if having a blank slate means that when you enter into this religious institution, society doesn't tell you that you have to do all these things in order for you to be good. You have to be baptized. You have to do all of these other things that religion tells you. We think when you step into that church on our side of the house, you are a blank slate. And the reason, even if you're an evil person, is because of the environment that you have been brought up in. We think that is the threshold that we have, and is much, much lower. The way in here is all the redemption arcs that they want to argue only happens if you make society think that these things are important, when in actuality redemption really is personal. Second issue then, how this disproportionately oppresses minorities of the world. We argued how this is used as justification to oppress religious minorities, and how individuals who are the ones who are not part of the religious institutions are the ones who are more often than not the ones that are more evil than others. So this is also engaging with the best case on that side of the house. Perhaps everyone is sort of evil, but there will always be society of people or groups of individuals who are less evil than others, and those are the victors of religious institutions. Those are your imams. Those are your people who write literally your religious scriptures and make fatwas on all of the things that you have to follow. That's literally the people who are coercing you to do all those things. So this is so we think this is the characterization that is far more likely. Their best response to this is being good is on the spectrum, but that misses the point, because good in religion is far different than what good is as a society. We think the good in religion is the thing that is gay conversion therapy, is the thing that is gender roles. All of the discrimination happens at the point in which when people are coerced into doing good good things. We think that on our side of the house, we allow people to, at the very least, challenge these norms. Because even if you are a normal human being who have sinned in the past, you are a blank slate, which means that you have the barrier of entry to becoming part of that religion is far, far lower. We think that on comparative, you have a higher likelihood of having a corrective mechanism. Let's look into the argument then. How the perception of an evil human population lends to political polarization by those who claim a divine entity. The framing here is that the strength of the religious and political rhetoric is much stronger when it is attached to a divine authority for a number of reasons. The first is the religious leaders cast themselves as having made up for their evilness and now claims authority over everyone else. So perhaps everyone in the world is born evil, but these religious leaders or people who are who have accessed powers and are in the corridors of powers are the ones that say that I've already made up for it, that's why I have all these good things. And this already exists in a lot of the Asian societies, with this feudalist mindset that some people are just more capable than others. We think that, secondly, what happens when the reason why people claim this divine entity is it looks like leaders say that there is a correcting force in evil society. It's very easy to claim that they're the Messiah because the religion already says that there are certain people that are inherently good and inherently evil, or at least on a scale more relatively good and relatively evil. We think that these are the reasons why the people who are in power can use this rhetoric. The harm here is twofold. Number one, it's very strong because it is directed to human beings and human populations that have been living in a world where religion is incredibly prioritized and emphasized. It is in a society where people are susceptible to all of this religious rhetoric, and people, which means at the end of this particular harm, there's more quantity of people who vote for these religious leaders as opposed to an affirmative. But secondly, any opposition to them is watered down because it's so prevalent that these people are inherently a divine authority. It's quite hard to really go against them, literally because these people claim this divine authority, and it's hard to go and make the moral argument against them. We think that this means that you entrench all of the people who are harmful in the corridors of power. More often than not, these are religious leaders that also have political success. This is like Modi in the BJP. This is like a lot of Iranian dictators out there. All of these things only exist the point in which when society claims and puts a moral emphasis on some people are just stronger or morally better than others. The comparative is far better because perhaps all of these things are sort of symmetric, but we already argued that it's wrong. It's worse on that side of the house. We have a tool to combat this. When we look at the LGBT movement, they say that they are born this way. This means that they are not born evil, but they are born as a person that is a blank slate, and the reason why we are discriminated is literally because society is the one that discriminates you. This equalizes the playing field. This allows you to overcome the power asymmetry, because now you are just as good as even the religious leaders. We think that is incredibly strong. For all those reasons, we take this away.
I thank the second affirmative speaker for that speech, and now I'd like to welcome the second negative speaker to continue the negative team's case.
Alright, yeah, I'm guessing this is audible. Quick shout out to my previous teammates across Xavier's and GLC. Australs, I've been doing my first majors ever in the online era, and it feels incredibly amazing to do this offline. After a while. Okay, starting in 3, 2, One, I think the clash on minorities and politicians is largely a wash in this debate for simple reasons. One, because if everyone is good on their side of the house, then probably the politicians are also perceived to be good and they can hijack that narrative. Which is all kinds of demagogic narrative and things like essentially why we're working like for nationalistic agendas. Those things are more likely to be posted and not likely to question them. Now when you think essentially those politicians could also be evil and though the society around you can also be tend to be evil because people are born evil in the first place, you can also skepticize and question those things to begin with. So I'm not too sure in terms of why like this becomes a tipping point in this round. I think this is largely symmetric in the general discourse. What are we simply winning upon? One is the sense of purpose that this narrative inherently gives to humans and why that is important. Because one, individuals are largely biologically ingrained to think positive for themselves. That is to say, due to evolution, due to self-preservation and the instincts, you essentially have evolved as individuals that who want the best for yourselves. You always, when you walk into a tournament, you want to win it. Or say, for example, when you essentially like go and do something you want it to turn out well, which means the arc that human beings want to set for themselves is towards essentially moving towards the positive, which means on their side of the house, if individuals are born good in that regard, there is nothing to work towards, which basically means that religion is something that individuals come to when they don't have a sense of purpose, when they essentially feel that they are lost, when they feel that they are essentially a speck in, say for example, this harrowing world, which means to say the basic fundamental premise of religion is largely to give individuals a sense of purpose and a sense of direction to move in a certain direction, which means to say, point at which when you essentially know that you are like born evil and have essentially fallible characteristics within yourself, that automatically pushes you to do something better and essentially fix those flaws in the first place, which is one, you're more likely to then take moral accountability for your actions and have that sense of agency to move towards something positive. That means in that regard, you're much more likely to say for example, give to charity, say for example, like contribute, say for example, to other communities, like form communities and essentially like deprioritize yourself to essentially like try to find the good in others. We think in that regard it's more likely to happen. And then they say people at the top would do it either way. I think it's largely going to be a top-down approach from our side of the house because it's on first it's largely what you feel as an individual. So when you feel that you are inherently evil and people who essentially say for example who are capable of doing charity, who hold like massive amounts of wealth, those individuals are then more likely to give to charity because like in that regard they would want to essentially selfishly, even if they want to better themselves, I think that's incredibly important like for them to do so, because the only way they can then do so is when they like feel that they're essentially evil and then they want to like have like that positive outlook and like comparatively be better themselves, which means then in that regard only you can have that positive arc and have more amount of say charities and redistribution schemes, because they say that people who perhaps have incentives would do it either way, but we argue that religion is perhaps the most important thing that pushes people to do so. That's why people are largely skeptical of paying taxes, but they contribute huge amounts of money to donations and charities simply because they feel that it serves their purpose inherently first. So when people think that they're already good and like people around them are also, which is there's nothing to fix in this world, at that point of time you're much more likely to hold on to that wealth, hold on to that privilege and hold on to say for example the thing that you have, which means in that regard you're much less likely to democratize resources and trickle them down to say for example lower and marginal echelons of society. That we think is the clearest mechanism, because the arc towards move from evil and moving towards positivity is the thing that drives people to contribute and democratize their wealth in the first place to begin with. Secondly, I think largely in terms of that purpose, I think individuals that have a clearer purpose in what they're working towards, because on their side of the house, even if they say you're constantly running on a treadmill, but if the treadmill is exactly what they wanted when they essentially felt alone and did not have anybody to talk to, and they turned to religion for essentially support, which means in that regard they're much more likely to like feel that sense of purpose, and they will obviously get incremental happiness by doing so. You can get incremental happiness once you contribute to charity, or say for example like somebody returns a favor subsequently, or you go ahead and take part in community engagement programs. So every possible step can be an incrementally happiness like thing that you can accrue onto yourself, and not like you always have this hedonic treadmill like and it'll create like a negative perception. So that purpose is unique and exclusive because you move from being evil towards being good, which is you feel that you need to do something yourself. On their side of the house, if you're already in that pedestal, I don't realize in terms of why do you need a sense of purpose to move towards anything in the first place. But thirdly, I think in terms of like, which means redemption and salvation is more likely to happen and like positively accrue on our side when you strive towards that goal and when you essentially strive towards like generating that upward curve for yourself. That can only happen when you essentially start from being evil and move towards essentially being good. But thirdly, I think this means that you're more likely to recognize fallibility and recognize problems of the world. Because if if everyone is good and like at that point of time it's largely likely to be, say for example, like a utopic world, I don't think you would recognize that there are problems in society in the first place to begin with, in terms of like impoverishment, in terms of poverty, in terms of economic like disparities that individuals have. I think at that regard, you're much more likely to go ahead and recognize those problems when you feel that there are inherent flaws that individuals have, and that is the reason why, say for example, problems have been created in the first place, and you work towards fixing them in the first place, which is you're more aware of the realities of suffering, and at that point of time you much more work towards alleviating that suffering in the first place to begin with. But lastly, I think in terms of like a general like view of skepticism, I think and like why skepticism essentially is important. Because here's the thing, right? I think people are largely a product of their circumstances, which means like even if you feel that everyone is good, not necessarily mean that they would want the best for say yourself at the end of the day. But what this does is it clouds out the narrative, because at that point you're not likely to question individuals because you feel everyone has good intentions for you at the end of the day. I think that consolidates power structures, that essentially consolidates the oppression, simply because they will always say we did this X, Y, and Z perhaps because that was in your best interest. So at that point of time, we never feel that even the bottom-up questioning never happens on their side of the house, simply because you inherently feel that whatever, say for example, the majority community does is in your best possible interest. On our side of the house, what changes is the way you build your worldview is one through skepticism, because everyone is evil and everyone can essentially like mean harm to you. Which means to say, even if say for example it stresses you out to an extent, like taking their best case, put some level of mental burden on you, but we feel that the trade-off of having more amount of agency and awareness is comparatively more important in this round, because at that point of time you are not likely to be swayed by individuals and have no control over in terms of what that outcome was. Which means people could manipulate you, people can sway you, people can push you into things on their side of the house, because you're not likely to be skeptical of other individuals. We think on our side, then you take more amount of, you give more amount of agency to individuals, but they're more skeptical about the world outside, which is you feel that others essentially are also born evil. I think from the grassroots level, that helps to challenge structures comparatively more. So say for example, calling out, like I was things like say gay conversion therapy, and those things are much more likely to be called out on our side of the house, point at which when you view people as evil and from the lens of skepticism, you question the imams, you question the people in positions of power, whether they're doing things in their own self-interest or whether it's actually good for you at the end of the day. So that sense of agency that we exclusively give to people is something that is incredibly important on our side of the house. Lastly then, we think this debate is one that is largely, I think religion is largely one that should give individuals a sense of purpose and moving towards like a particular direction at the end of the day. Which means to say, I think the only way then, subsequently on our side of the house, when you essentially feel that there is, you're born with negativity and you essentially have to push towards being positive at the end of the day, that is the only arc through which you can essentially move forward or have that sense of purpose in life at the end of the day. Which means that forces people to essentially contribute more to charity, contribute more essentially to democratize their wealth, because at the end of the day, even like this is a selfish venture, because you want to overcome the evil within yourself and be a better human being at the end of the day. That is the inherent precursive thing that pushes individuals to be better. That is what makes them part with their wealth, contribute to charities, like essentially, and do all of that, that largely alleviates people who do not have access to those resources for those reasons negative.
Thanks very much for that speech. And to conclude the substantive portion of the affirmative team's case, I'd like to welcome the third affirmative speaker.
Before I start my speech, I just want to do a quick shout out. Shout out to my family, especially my mom. I promise I'll call you, even though I didn't call you yesterday. Shout out to also to Indira family. I really love seeing you guys here. And finally, I just want to shout out to the circuit I was raised from. I was raised in Malaysian debate circuit, Himalaya, IU, and Sunway, MMU, all those institutions that has been helped me like develop as a person. Southeast Asia circuit. Good luck to NUS in the final. Break your leg. And finally, also the Asian circuit. Both Asians are on the stage right now, and I'm so proud to be here. Begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. I came from a very religious school, and the biggest problem is that I have a lot of friends who believe in religious indoctrination, but I don't really believe in it. And whenever there's somebody who are religious leaders or like imams who do weird things, such as like molesting children, there's always two questions that always be surrounding me. One, will I be able to actually be as good? Because the problem is somebody who I believe already achieved good are also doing something that is considered immoral and evil. Or two, is that actually an evil thing? Because for some reason, what that means that what that imam is doing is actually a good thing, because potentially that person is the most moral person that I could actually see. Here's the problem on negative side. They never actually explain to you what does it mean to be good. And this is important. Because on that side of the house, they say that, you can race on the treadmill, you can try your best to become better every single day. But the problem is that, what is exactly your goal? If it's true that their goal is just to become like an imam, what that means is that you give a lot of power to the imam to do whatever they want simply because of the fact that you are, moral and you have a lot of ability to survive this journey. Or if that's not the case, what's going to happen is that it removes the ability for people to feel the solace, because there's no ability for people to escape the being of just being evil in nature. And this is why their case falls, because the fact that they don't give any happiness for people. I want to point out how uncharitable negative has been. Because notice on that side of the house, they say that people are born evil and their goal is to strive to become good. For some reason on our side of the house, we have to defend a world where everyone just consistently become good. Note that the motion says that we're born good. What that means is that you have a possibility of you becoming evil in the future. The question becomes is how exactly you maintain yourself becoming good. If the example is about the world champion, I would believe that a world champion would not want to lose in a quarterfinal world in the future, which is why they are continuously trying to practice every single time that is possible, because they want to maintain their status. That's what's happening on our side of the house. Never engage with that version. I have 3 questions I want to ask. First, about the solace and the purpose, and I want to know, for some reason this wasn't really engaged by that side of the house, or at the very least wasn't substantive very well. I want to know in terms of what is actually the purpose and the solace that you get. Because notice on that side of the house, their main claim is that at the point where you are able to do all of these things, you are able to feel solace, because you are able to feel like the agency and all that thing. Notice that on their argument, the first argument that comes from the first negative is to suggest that there's a lot of reasons why exactly you're going to do all of the good things. 1, because of fear. 2, because you are trying to redeem yourself. And 3, you want to make sure that you are able to do all those things that exist within the scripture. That's not really agency, right? Because you are literally doing things because you just feel like you are evil and you need to actually escape this journey of from becoming evil to becoming good. That means that you lose your ability to feel agency. Why is this important? Because if their goal is about solace, they're not able to get solace because you're no longer doing things that makes you feel happy or closer to God, but rather just doing things to make sure that you don't go to hell, which is a very problematic thing from that side of the house in terms of solace. In terms of the purpose, at that point you no longer feel like the happiness within your life, because you are just doing things based on what the religion wants rather than what you actually want. So maybe the argument is about the charity. I'll argue to you that just because you're doing charity because somebody told you it's not really a good thing for yourself, then that's a huge harm on that side of the house. That will already prove why that negative cannot win. But second issue then, what is exactly the incentive to do good and to do bad? And this is where the bulk of the case comes from on that side of the house. The first thing they prove to us is that you have a lot of reasons to improve. And just like I said earlier, they literally prove to us why exactly human on that side of the house will no longer have agency to do whatever they want. But secondly, this is why they miss our argumentation, right? Because what we explain to you is that it's very hard for you to actually have the capacity to actually fulfill what exactly is good. Things such as donation is very hard for the poor people to do. Things such as being a good wife is very hard for other women, and it condemns women who actually want to chase their dreams. Because even if you try so hard to actually do all of these things, you will always be put into a standard that you will never be achieved on that side of the house. And this is where very important, right? In order for me to cleanse my sin on that side of the house or even reach heaven, I have to do a lot of things that on that side of the house that a lot of people cannot do. Only the privileged people are able to do access or able to access all of these things. Which means that on that side of the house, what's more likely going to happen is that only the privileged people are going to be considered as moral and good people, whereas the poor people are going to be demonized. Whereas the women on that side of the house will be demonized. Whereas a lot more minorities are going to be demonized on that side of the house, and that's far worse because that means that you would remove the ability for them to access religion within its far worse. But secondly, it's about how exactly the feedback loop exists, right? So for example, if I know that I'm an evil person and I accidentally do something evil, people keep telling me I'm an evil person, I'm more likely to believe
that I'm evil, and which makes me feel like it's okay for me to do evil things because who cares? I'm already evil to begin with. Whereas comparative, if you were born as good, what's likely going to happen is that whenever you do good things, people are telling you you are doing a good thing, which makes you feel like it's enjoyable for you to do good things because of the fact that you are a good person and you don't want to be called as a bad person anymore, which is why in terms of improvement are far better on our side of the house. But moreover, should I explain to you why complacency will not exist on our side of the house? Was it engaged from that side of the house? You have to take note on that. But notice is that religious will still have teaching in terms of explaining people what is considered good and what is considered bad. So maybe on that side of the house they are true, not considering just even if. Maybe there is true that on our side of the house there will be a lot lesser people who are not going to do good things. But at the very least, they are not doing a bad thing. Things such as stealing, things such as harming other people. All of those things will not exist on our side of the house because people continuously teach other people to actually not do these things. Let's assume both of these things are very symmetrical. You're not sure how exactly to judge this. Let's weigh it up. First is, how exactly are you likely to follow these things? Because it's important. They might prove there's an incentive. They haven't proved why exactly there's a capability of people to do this. I want to prove here is that the capability of people to doing on that side of the house is much lesser because you know that in order for you to become good on that side of the house, you need to give out a lot of money. And they say itself, there's a lot of effort that you need to put into it, which means that it's very hard for people to do it. There will be a small scale of people who are able to do all the good things. At the very least, on our side of the house, the amount of people who are not doing bad things are much lesser because it's very easy for you to not steal other people's money. It's very easy for you to not curse at other people because all those things doesn't require a lot of effort to begin with because of the fact that you just are avoiding from doing all of those things. Which means that in terms of scale of people who are doing good things and bad things, at the very least, the scale of preventing harms are far better on our side compared to that side of the house where the scale of goods are better. This alone makes us debate because we make sure that people are able to do less than bad things. But I just want to know people will still do a lot of good things on our side of the house. Final issue then. What is actually your outlook in life? Because they say that, well, people will just think negatively of other people. I'm not entirely sure why exactly this is a good thing. If I'm a Muslim in my country, what's likely going to happen is that I'm going to continuously think that other regions in my country are negative. That means that I'm more likely to demonize other regions as well. This is where you create tension. This is where I flip their argument. You create tension between regions because of the fact that you continuously demonizing each other. You believe that other people are evil until they baptize themselves. You believe that people are evil until they go to Makkah or give donation and all that things. That's a very problematic thing because that means that you remove the ability for people to even sympathize with each other, especially when it's necessary. But secondly, you literally have no reason to actually improve on that side of the house because of the fact that if their argument is about no accountability, notice what we explained to you at the point where you know that somebody is good, but at the point where they do bad things, you are more likely to question them. On that side of the house, if the imams are continuously do bad things, you are unlikely to question them because you know that they are the benchmark of what exactly considered good, which means that you remove accountability on that side of the house. The conclusion to this speech is very simple. We prove to you why exactly there's no the solace is far less on that side of the house. We prevent more harms and increase more benefits, and we're able to increase accountability on our side of the house. That alone wins the debate.
Thanks very much for that speech. And to conclude the substantive portion of this debate, I'd like to welcome the third negative speaker.
I'm hoping this is audible. Okay. Rather internationally, it's a quick shout out. Firstly, to my parents for funding this crazy obsession of mine. To my mother for pushing me into debating the first time, and to my previous institution, DTU, to be the best. Alright then, starting in 3, 2, 1. I first want to make a strategic observation about their case. Their case is that people are always on a treadmill, and that's the first harm they push on us. That people will constantly try to improve themselves. That means society also recognizes that you're always on a treadmill, and there's no end goal. That means there's no goal that you can realistically achieve in this life. That means judgment for individuals happens not during their interim life phase, but rather happens on your deathbed when you actually reach afterlife and all those kind of things, right? That means society recognizes that everyone is on a treadmill to do good. That means that the harm that the next question or in whip is something that's false, because they say that you'll hold Imam to the highest level. But I think when you recognize that Imam is also the same treadmill, I think you realize that his Imam is not someone you can hold or like ascribe the highest sort of like threshold to be good in the first place to be. That means you realize that the Imam is not something that's someone who is fallible, someone who can fall prey to society's evil, can fall prey to things like indoctrination, jealousy, greed, and all those kind of things. That means you never hold Imam to the pristine level that they posit on their side of the house. That means you probably still question those people on our side, because that's what the worst case is, that we constantly push people on a treadmill. And that's exactly what you recognize in your Imam, that this person is also someone who can fall prey to society, and that's why you should constantly question them as opposed to accepting whatever they say, because they're inherently good on the comparative. I think they never tell us why so people are likely to just go ahead and question an Imam's action, primarily because they know that when they know that this Imam is someone who has a good conscience, has good intentions. Because I think the mechanistic link that's missing on side affirmative is this, right? They don't tell us why good intentions automatically mean good actions for a greater good of society, right? Because they say that good intentions can mean people wanting to help others. Like exactly what Robin said, right? Even Thanos wanted to help the world, but he ended up killing half the population, because the manifestation of those good intentions doesn't necessarily translate into good actions for greater good of society in the first place, right? What happens on the comparison on our side? When you see that everyone's evil, and this is where we don't push the accountability on society, but rather take it on individuals themselves, because that's a more pervasive and a more short way of you doing good in society. What happens that when you see yourself as someone who's evil, and you need to reach like a redemption arc in life, you have to reach a point of good, because that's what it just tells you to do, that you are evil, and these are steps you have to follow to reach that end goal. And if you keep on questioning every action that you do, because just based on the idea of you having a selfish interest to overcome the evil within you, to try to do good actions, because you need to reach that redemption point at any point of time. Then they say that you have higher thresholds for people who are coming from poor backgrounds and minorities, and only the rich can access this. I think that's fundamentally untrue, because religions operate on a spectrum. So they probably ask you to donate 1/10 of your salary and not exactly $1 million. So that means you probably exist on a spectrum, and you can ask people to opt in a way which is more conducive to them, and not force them to do actions that are exceptionally extreme in the first place, right? I think everyone does not go to church every day. You probably sometimes go to church once a month, once a week, or even once a year, depending on how religious you are. I think that means that people can have varying degrees of opt-in into religion, and not a consistent degree that they say exists on their side. I think that's just a lie. What they say that says that only privilege can exist, can go and access things like good in the any point of time. Then the last argument that comes from their side is that if you believe you're good, you constantly do good because you want to maintain that goodness. I would posit that if you know that you're good, then all your actions have a safety net. That means whatever actions you do, even if those actions are necessarily evil to the world, you always believe that you're doing something good. That means human beings never create a sense of moral accountability or culpability onto themselves, as opposed to just society telling you that you're doing something bad. Because that's the mechanism on their side, right? Then what happens when you tell anyone that something is evil? You just put a burden on society to say that if I am doing something evil, it's probably because society is telling me to do, because the environment is telling me to do. But the idea is simple, that if you believe everyone's good, you actually never question society, because you also think society society's way of operation also falls in the same narrative of everyone being good. That means you never question society in the first place, because you know that whatever society is telling you to do is probably doing it from a good intention, so you never actually question whatever environment is telling you to do, or whatever social pressures are telling you to do. Next, let's also take out the idea on minorities. I think that's largely a wash in this debate, primarily because minorities are boxed in due to multiple other factors like politics, caste-based identities, and like people just operating on caste-based politics, and also things like economic systems, capitalism, wanting to keep people at certain thresholds so that the rich can get richer, the poor can get poorer. I'm not even sure how this particular narrative influences people in a way where minorities can always ask for things and get the same kind of policy change that they want in a certain house. I think they take a high burden from first speaker onwards, and they never reach that burden on their side. Our burden is very simple. What we do on our side is uniquely put moral culpability on individuals. Even if this means that people go ahead and keep on a treadmill to just keep on doing good actions so that they reach a point of redemption it's still better. And even if it's a huge opportunity cost for people, we are still okay with this, because at net you never have a sense of complacency, and you probably just keep on doing good. That means probably society is benefited. But secondly, it's good for those people who don't have a purpose in life and who turn to religion for a sense of purpose. That means if you are on a treadmill, that treadmill itself becomes your purpose to continue doing that till the last day of your life. I think that's generally good even on our side of the house. So even in the worst case, we are somewhat better than them. Lastly, what is the mechanism which wins us the debate on all clashes? The first thing the only thing we tell you is that all human beings biologically have a self-preservation instinct. That self-preservation instinct creates a confirmation bias in us to go ahead and ascribe to anything that's good. That means that when we enter a tournament, we always feel that we'll win every round because we want to win that tournament. That confirmation bias in itself, due to biology saying that you have a self-preservation instinct towards everything that's positive, means you never create a friction against those things where religions also tell you that you are inherently good. That means it sets a sense of complacency into people. What happens in the comparative? When you tell people that you are evil and the biology inside you tells that and gives you confirmation bias or something that's positive, you create a friction between those two things. That friction means that you ruminate on these things more, you think about these things more, and that's why you question yourself more, but also question others around you more. Because now something is not something that's positive, but a negative in nature, it goes against the confirmation bias and creates a sense of rumination inside your head. That is good because now you put accountability not just on yourself, but on society as well. That our society's actions generally good, or they're probably coming from a place where they are evil. So even if they say that you won't help anyone because you think everyone's evil, I think that's fundamentally untrue, because you're not helping them because you want to change them, but rather you want to go ahead and reach your own redemption arc is why you will help them, because of your own selfish interest that you want to preserve and reach that stage, that point where you are considered good on Judgment Day is why you will help the society. Even if they're evil or even if they're good, it doesn't really matter. You will help them on our side of the house primarily because it's a self-preservation instinct for you to go and do that, as opposed to the comparative. You opt into whatever the self-preservation instinct is telling you, and you never have a sense of, and you induce sense of complacency to people. That means they never try to ruminate on these things, they never think about these things, but rather on the comparative, they just say that whatever we are doing is with good intentions. Even if the manifestation of that good intention is something that leads to a bad outcome in society, they never question themselves. That's exactly what politicians do. They go ahead and say that we are doing good for you, but at the end of the day, you know how they are. So I think that probably means that the entire case is something that has a huge gap, which the gap looks like them not telling us what exactly are the intentions for people, like the mechanism for people to manifest those good intentions into positive outcomes for society. Our side tells you that we can't change the world. Minorities probably won't get better on either side of the house, but what we can uniquely do on our side of the house is make people question everyone and firstly question themselves and all their actions, and don't get away with the sense of complacency that if you are good, you don't need to do anything more, and you can just maintain this good by doing whatever actions you want, even if the manifestations are generally bad. At least on our side, to increase the scope of questioning, so that means the preachers can't get away with everything, that means you can't get away with everything. We get an internal accountability mechanism on people, and that's really better for all those reasons. Next.
Thanks very much for that speech. And to begin the reply portion of this debate, I'd like to welcome the negative reply speaker.
Right, starting in 3, 2, 1. Firstly, how this narrative is likely to be perceived. Secondly, purpose and moral accountability. Lastly, on pragmatic outcomes. Firstly, in terms of how this narrative is likely to be perceived. We tell you on our side of the house that point at which when you know that you're born evil, you move towards a self-resolution arc in which you do good things to overcome that evil that you inherently have within yourself. They tell on this in terms of like if they would perceive that everyone outside is also evil, which means there's no need to essentially help them out. But we break this deadlock by telling you that the precursive thing that individuals make decisions upon is within their selves. In terms of if they know individually that they're evil, at that point of time they are more likely to essentially make better choices and essentially improve themselves. That is the tipping point at which you essentially go ahead and contribute to charity and essentially try to help and build communities, because at that point of time you're more likely to move towards that arc. The precursive decision that you make is inherently within yourself, and that is the way you're much more likely to perceive things around. Then they see that this narrative is only likely to be accessible only by the rich. One, we told you why the rich anyway have a large amount of resources, so if it trickles down from that, you get more amount of money into charity and all of those things. That largely alleviates poverty, gives you education, healthcare, and those things anyway. But secondly, we told you why people can contribute on a spectrum in terms of, say, for example, like contributing like 1/10 of your income or like whatever you want in terms of voluntary donations and things like exist. These things can be done on a spectrum. I'm not sure why you always have to like go ahead and put like $1 million to charity. I don't really feel that works. What do we clearly win upon? One is in terms of purpose. They say that this creates like a treadmill that keeps pushing you. We told you why religion is the way it comes in and interacts with your life is largely giving you a sense of purpose when you don't have any. When you feel that you're lost, when you don't have anybody to talk to, when you feel that the world is crumbling in front of you. Those are instances when you resort to religion to give you a sense of purpose, which is if it puts you on a treadmill, that puts you on an arc to essentially make yourself better. At that point of time, you feel that treadmill is perhaps the most important thing that individuals needed at that point of time. But secondly, we told you why religion tells you to do good things in terms of doing charity, building communities, and doing all those positive things. So that arc is also likely to be positive in that direction. Then they say that perhaps you can, like individuals who feel that they're already good, that would maintain at the top, and at that point of time, perhaps like those benefits will symmetricize. First thing to note is they don't prove the delta. I mean, that's why we're pushing on the first three speeches. If you know that you're already good, you're already at a certain pedestal, that does not inherently or cognitively push you to do anything better. So which means the greatest delta is when you're evil, when you have flaws, and then you push yourself to do better. That is when you get the maximum amount of change to essentially make incremental efforts to better yourself. That's why they lose on that, simply because they never prove that maintaining and staying at the top is an enough cognitive or a pragmatic delta for you to essentially exercise. That's why on our side now, when you have that overall arc, you're much more likely to get inherently that sense of purpose on which we win. Second thing then in terms of moral accountability, we give them more amount of agency and make people take what you call cognizance of their actions. That largely means that point at which when you know that you essentially are evil and you have to take accountability for your actions, you're much more likely to go and fix things around you. Like essentially go ahead, like deprioritize yourself as Robin says, and like think about other people in the first place. Which means that creates the first initial step for you to essentially think about others and essentially do good things beyond what your self-preservation arc would like tell you to. Which means at that point of time you take more moral accountability for your actions. But secondly, it gives you a greater sense of agency, which you told you is the most important thing. They say if you have good intentions, that probably like others would also do good to you, and it's like a utopic world at the end of the day. We told you that dissonance was that even if people think good about you, not necessarily that they will always, that in pragmatically they will do the good things. That's why politicians engage in things like demagoguery to essentially get votes rather than say, for example, welfare policies. The way this deadlock is broken is because you become more skeptical about things around you. You essentially feel that everyone around you is also evil and could have negative intentions. So even if at that point of time we think the sense of agency that you then accrue on individuals is something that's incredibly important, because it makes you question things, go ahead and call out things that are largely likely to be detrimental, literally the amount of change that they wanted to get. Last thing then is in terms of like outcomes, we told you why, which you have more amount of charity on their side house when people resort to that self-art, but you give them more amount of agency to essentially think for themselves and critically think and evaluate things before coming to conclusion. That is what makes people stay in religion and not opt out of religion, because that's where exclusively religion fills in the vacuum, gives them the sense of purpose, and makes them be better from what they inherently are born into. For those reasons, negative.
Thanks very much for that speech. And to conclude the debate, I'd like to welcome the affirmative reply speaker.
The best version of the negative theme is that people will be pressured into doing good things. The best version of the F theme is that people will be pressured to avoid bad things. What is considered good and bad is quite relative, because what we argue is that religious institutions are the ones that hijack what is good and what is bad. This characterization still stands, so perhaps they are correct in proving all of their mechanisms, But this is in a race to acquire a goodness that is dependent on what the religious institution says. They didn't prove why that's inherently a good thing after they have achieved this level of agency. We don't think you can credit their entire case then. Two assumptions that I'd like to break down. Their whole case is contingent on how the world is being perceived to be perfect, and this stagnates solving world issues like paying taxes. The religious minorities don't think that the world is perfect. They feel like they are never enough. In fact, everyone in this room knows that the world isn't perfect. So perhaps it is true, they say, that it's just 1/10 of your wealth. But 1/10 of your wealth for a poor person is no food for tomorrow. Hajj costs a lot. The flight to Mecca is expensive. We don't necessarily think they have ever really proven why this is a good cost. The second assumption is that people don't question others because of the assumption that people are inherently perfect. This only happens if you are perfect even after you are born and consistently after you are acquired life experience. The notion says that you are born perfect, but of course society will change you and alter you in ways that you do not know. That's why the strategy in AFT was quite clear to begin with. It is on the perception of human beings as a moral entity, that they are inherently good and society is the one that is at fault because of the things that you do. This was confused on that side of the house. I don't think all of their responses were contingent on that their case is already out of this debate. The clash that we win wholeheartedly is on who gets to reach solace better. Because if both things assume that religion is personal, it's a communing with God, and it is incredibly it's on a one-to-one level. We think that we have that better. We give a couple of things. This is that you don't need to run, and God will listen to you even if you are a sinner. And even if you are a sinner, it's not your fault, it's because of society. They told us that there is this race, this redemption arc, because you have to do things because you are fearful. The best case is that people do all of these things and achieve solace. But we argue in first, second, and third that this entrenches the power of the religious institutions much more. So perhaps you are racing to become the imam, and in the end you do become the imam. We contested why this imam is actually a bad person. But secondly, a more likely scenario is that simply people can't achieve this level of agency that you push them to attempt to. So society already has structural barriers. They haven't proven the reality of circumstances of people on the ground. If you want to buy accountability, you have to break down the characterization that we gave in first and second on how religion is dogmatic and how they control what is good and bad. Perhaps on that side of the house people call out, but we argued on our side of the house that it's much little and few and far between because of the strength of religious institution anyway. But regardless if you buy this accountability clash or not, our argument is independent because it is just personal capacity of a human being dealing with God. On our side of the house, the barrier of entry is much lower. You don't have to do all these things in order to become a good Muslim. You can just be a human being that has sin, but you are capable of being forgiven. The last reason why we win this debate is on the way. Perhaps on that side of the house, and this is really being charitable, the people who are capable might exist, and they do good things, and perhaps these good things trickle down. But we give you lots of reasons why this is untrue, because we doubt if they needed religion to push them into doing those bad things. Because perhaps Bill Gates would have done the same things that he did if he was not a religious person. But secondly, we doubt if they are the most important part of this debate, because more often than not, people who are oppressed by religion is the religious minorities anyway. It's far easier for you to buy the link that we give, that religion is inherently dogmatic, and how we give them a fight, because you are worth it even if you have sinned. For all those reasons, we win this debate.
Thanks again for an excellent debate. The judges will now go to the deliberation room.